Hi, I'm Alois Rosario from PingSkills. Riz has asked us a question about the use of the wrist for a beginner. So Riz says he thinks he understands the importance of the wrist in table tennis, and when he's doing his stroke, he's allowing his wrist to stay relaxed. But one of his friends has commented that it looks like his wrist is probably moving a little bit too much. So his question is, do you think the wrist action should be introduced to a player as soon as possible, or should be reserved until the player has consistent technique? Well, Ariza, I think having a relaxed wrist and a relaxed arm and body in general is really good for table tennis. But initially, I think if you are too relaxed or too floppy, then it will lead to a lot of inconsistencies with your stroke. So as a beginner, I would recommend that you try to keep it fairly straight during your strokes, and don't try to force it through definitely. Now, I know that you said that you're not forcing it through and just trying to keep it relaxed, but I would say just perhaps have a little bit more tension in the wrist, just so you're keeping a bit more consistency to what this whole arm structure looks like. So for your backhand, eventually you will have a relaxed wrist and you'll see that your wrist will come from here all the way through. But initially, I would recommend just keeping that wrist nice and straight and mainly utilising your forearm to move the bat through. So I think it's important to keep that wrist nice and straight. Eventually, you'll be able to utilise your wrist all the way through from here to there during your stroke. But initially, just keep a nice straight line with your forearm and your wrist. Similarly with the forehand, try to keep that fairly straight most of the time. So with the forehand, you don't tend to use your wrist as much as the backhand, but eventually you will start to get a bit of a waggle and a relaxed wrist to get that happening. But initially, keep your wrist fairly straight so that you can bring the bat through consistently. So initially, keeping your wrist nice and straight gives your bat a very consistent path through the ball. As you start to relax the wrist a little bit more or allow it to move through, you'll see that the angle of my racket is changing a lot during the stroke. So with a straight wrist, you see the angle of my racket stays very consistent. With a floppy wrist, you'll see that the angle of my racket changes a lot. So why do we want to use our wrist more later on? Because with that extra wrist action, you can get more speed, more spin through the ball as well. So initially though, nice straight wrist. As you progress, as you develop that feel and consistency, you can start to get that whipping action through the ball.